Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City, where you get the real skinny on what's happening in town at his website, Tony'sKansasCity.com. Tony, welcome in. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year, Pete. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's always great to have you here. And listen, conversation number one has to be Kansas City, record homicides. There was a press conference this week with the police chief and the mayor. What do you make of this year and what we saw in 23 and the fact that most major American cities are trending down in homicides and Kansas City sets a record at 182?
Here's the one thing that just as a Kansas City, and maybe it's you want to start the year off on like a bright note, right? But STL, and this came from a Fox News article. I'm sure your listeners are familiar with it. STL's down 42 homicides.
Yeah.
And so just compared to us, you did this great interview with the KCK police chief, and you know, it's just very simple stuff. I guess first off is like, that's what you get when you fight with the police for the police union and police leadership for 2 years straight almost. This is the result of that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to other cities, just as a Kansas City, and I guess this is my only unique hot take that I kind of had a good response to on the blog, is that when St. Louis does better than you, that's crisis mode. Like what a personal affront from someone to Kansas City is like, oh yeah, St. Louis is making progress, but you're stuck with this horrible, like shameful, record-setting year. It's to any Kansas City, and when St. Louis is doing better than you, that's when the alarm bells go off.
Yeah, you're right. They should be going off. So what about the media coverage of this? I mean, you're a guy who knows this town as well as anybody. You're in media. I think you do a better job than many of the more mainstream media outlets. What do you make of their coverage of this record-setting homicide year?
Well, you know, I try to aggregate everything. I try to reach out to as many sources as possible. And the one thing I'm always looking for surprises. And rather than me opining, I noticed that even the hipsters at the pitch, these are the most like down with the cause. They're like, hey, you know, we're getting tired of hearing the same old, like, you know, yes, we should light candles. We should mourn, like, with respect to everyone's feelings. That's great. But like these programs that they're doing, these new ideas, these ideas aren't new. We've heard about door knocking. We've heard about anti-crime programs, and we've been through it all before for a decade of this, and especially over the past 2 years, when even the hipsters are like, yeah, no, we've seen this before.
Now, are the hipsters, since you're more in that world than I am, are they finally admitting that you got to just arrest bad guys and put them in jail, or are they still this mindset, this woke mindset of, well, the real victims are the criminals because society let them down?
No, yeah, you have a corporate gig, Pete. So it's still blame Whitey. So I wish there was more progress along that front. The only hope is that they're finally waking up to maybe anti-crime programs don't solve this.
So they're slow learners, is what you're telling me.
Unfortunately, that's true.
But if you want a positive spin, their eyes might be opening up. Mm-hmm. A little bit. Especially when you got a case study right across the river.
Right.
Carl Oakman comes on the show and says, yeah, we're arresting drug gangs. We're going after drug pushers because those are the guys that ultimately commit crimes and shoot people. And it's working. And we're down, from 58 to 24 homicides from 2020 to 2023. Like, you got a case study right here in town. You don't have to go to Omaha or any of these other cities that they talk about.
No, I hope that they would realize that. And if anybody's opened their eyes, I mean, I think that interview, if people want to go back, I linked it on my blog. They really need to go back and listen to somebody right across, just a walk away from Kansas City doing something about it. I mean, that is, if there's one bright spot this holiday season and in the aftermath of a really bad year for crime, that's it.
Yeah. All right. Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City is joining us. What about the, mayor, the police chief, the press conference this week? You saw it, you followed it, you blogged about it. Do you feel like they just did that because they felt they had to? Do you think there are any answers, or do you feel like we're just kind of in this malaise?
Well, two things. I'm surprised how much I know he won by 80 points. I know there's no real challengers. We're all thinking like he's going to get swept away to D.C. So two things. I'm really surprised about how little accountability he has had, because this and I got a good response to this as well. Is it's his? He owns this. It's over 2 terms. He owns this more than the council, more than the police board. This is his deal because he's had an extended term. Secondly, that 11-hour shifts. I mean, that was the plan. That was the headline to come out of this. The KCPD on their news release side of their website came out with a big press release trying to explain it. I don't know how 11-hour shifts. Just think about that for a second. Okay, it takes your average person about an hour to get to work. So we're talking about cops who've been working half the day. I mean, catch them in that 11th hour. Like that's the plan. I know you've been on the Week in Review show. Eric Wesson, who's has a long storied career in this community, especially in the urban core. He always asks. He's very persistent by asking me, "What's the plan?" And so at the beginning of the new year, the plan is 11 working cops 11 hours a day or 11-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. That's really what I don't like. If that's the plan, we need a new plan.
Well, here's the thing. I don't even understand, and, well, maybe this is I'll ask the police department this over the weekend. I'll ask one of the media folks about this. But how does that work now? Because they go from 4 days and 10 hours. They're going to do another 4th day at 7 hours? If you're doing 3 11s, you do 1 7? Or are they just going to pay them for 40 for doing 3 11s? I don't even understand how that's going to work.
Well, you've been consistent with this over the past 2 years, and so has the police union. And whether you like cops or don't cops, or you think it's Whitey's fault or it's systemic. Instead of Whitey, I should say it's a systemic problem. We need more cops.
Yeah,
we just need more cops. I mean, that's.
Well, we do, but KCK's down 20% as well. Carl Oakman said that in the interview. They're down 20%. So I don't want to hear. I agree. We need more cops. There's no doubt about it. But you can't blame the whole thing on not having the cops. You just can't. Mm-hmm. I think that's ridiculous. What they won't do, the biggest issue I have is Quentin Lucas. Not that there's some major policy he can pass that would reduce crime. I told him that yesterday in our conversation. But he's got the bully pulpit. If he called out this prosecutor, that would go a long way. If they want to work together on something, the police chief and the mayor, since they seem like they're best buddies now, why not call out this prosecutor who has failed this community at every turn? In 2021, she said, Tony, that she wanted to basically stop prosecuting drug crimes because they prosecuted too many blacks based on their percentage of the population. I found the story from 2021. I talked about it yesterday. And meantime, Carl Oakman's like, we're going after the drug crimes because that's reducing homicides. And if Quentin Lucas used his bully pulpit and the police chief met with the prosecutor and said, start prosecuting these drug crimes again, we'll go after these guys, I think that'd make a difference. But they don't want to touch the prosecutor, and I don't know why, because she's a lame duck. She's done this year.
Well, and that's where a little bit of my being an old man, I'm pushing. I'm not there yet, but I'm pushing that half-century mark.
Okay. So, you look great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Please let your radio audience believe that. So when we get in that cycle, and then this is why any hipster over 30, your elder millennials know, is that when you pass it on to the prosecutor, we've been through this with Casey Nova, our one success that year that murders went down, I think about 2013, 2014, the prosecutors passed the buck to like, no, it's not us, it's just judges. Mm-hmm. And so we have this like revolving cycle of people that we can blame in Jackson County and in Kansas City. Is it the mayor? No, it might be the police. Is it the police? No, it's the prosecutor. Is it the prosecutor? No, it's the judges. And so basically for every election cycle, we keep doing that, and everybody, one person gets thrown out, some people get sick of it, but at the end of the day, it becomes a circular argument. And so I hope. Honestly, I think you're maybe it's the drug crimes, but when I see Mayor Garner, when I see the KCK police chief, I mean, it's just leadership. I mean, it's just stronger leadership. And like you say, people using their bully pulpit to kind of speak out like, this is a problem. Here's what we're doing about it.
Yeah. Tony Botello, Tony's Kansas City. Happy Friday, my man. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So Jackson County, the debacle, the infighting of Jackson County, the Royals, the Chiefs, just headline first. How likely is it, do you think, that the Royals actually end up staying in Jackson County with all the drama and infighting happening right now?
Oh, I hate this. I hate to be this type of person, but it really is 50-50. Alternative perspective. I talked to a very smart conservative person. And he's more of a fine. Remember the rare old physically conservatives.
Yeah.
They don't really exist much.
Yeah.
But I think what the Royals might be encountering is that they made their offer. They've put it out there. But when you come out like, hey, we need help with $5 billion. Like a lot of people, and they look at the history of the organization. 103 or 106 losses last year.
It was over 100.
So over 100 games lost. Maybe not too many places, even Nashville, are excited about that deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically what they've been confronted with. So I hate to say that it's 50-50 whether they stay or not. What's more interesting to me, and what's the headline on my blog right now, is just as we get close to the deal. Okay, because I got to brag a little bit. I put my blog was the first put out January 23rd. That's the real deadline. John Sherman, who obviously a self-made millionaire. You ever met a guy who goes to prison? They put their arm around their food. So obviously a self-made person, just such a tough negotiator on it's baseball. Nobody's going to live or die whether or not they leave or not, but just really tough negotiator. For the Royals, you in Clay County, here's a baseball bat, figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so that's the environment that we've been put in, and in that environment, just the leadership mess in Jackson County has been a nightmare. And now you have, and this might appeal to your audience, you have Jackson County is a Democrat-dominated county. You have Democrats really worried, sounding alarm bells, a Republican might take over as the legislative chair, and that's amid that.
Who would that be?
It would be 5th District, the legislator Jeannie Lauer. That's who the compromise would be.
Okay,
and so she might get it.
She might be the legislative chair.
That's right. And for your and the sausage making, it's kind of boring, but it's important because any deal, and an insider had to explain it to me, any deal, even if Frank White comes down from the mountain with 2 tablets, I've got the deal, I can secure the Royals, it all has to go through the legislature.
They got to vote on it by January 23rd.
That's right.
To get something on the ballot for April.
That's right.
To vote on a 3/8 sales tax extension.
And everything after April, you run into the 2024 nightmare that nobody's looking forward to.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be a part of that. And the team's background, behind the scenes gossip is that the teams have done the studies. They can win in April, but it has to be on the ballot.
Yeah, it's got to be April. And you go to August or forget November, high voter turnout, they could be in trouble.
That's the conventional wisdom. Even August, and people will say you'll have experts, very, very well coiffed newspaper people. Oh, there's still August. You start to, the headlines are going to be, we all know the headlines are going to be crazy by August. People are going to be angry. They're going to be ready to vote. They're not going to be in the mood. April is the polling that they've done. They know that they can win in April.
In Jackson County.
That's right.
Is Clay County serious, or is it just being used as leverage?
I think in hindsight, they made some good arguments, but in hindsight, their deadline, I believe, you tell me, I think
in the next couple of weeks too.
Yeah.
April.
Is coming up.
Yeah.
And I have not heard that there's anything even close to being inked in Clay County.
Yeah, I haven't either. So now you look at this and you say, okay, if they stay in Jackson, is this East Village site the place? Now this guy that owns the Kansas City Star building, the old Star building, is chirping that he's got a good spot for him. Do you think that's real or no?
No, the Privatera family, it'd be great to do business with them. They're very, very pro. They have a great construction company, but no. I mean, we're almost back with 3 weeks left to go. We are almost back to square one because nobody's excited about the East Village. There is no plan, and the prospect and what labor activists, what Stand Up KC, and what a lot of other people have validly voiced their concerns about is you don't put a blank check on the ballot. I mean, it just sets things up for failure, and you will have sources inside the legislature saying, no, don't put a 3A sales tax, whatever you want. Because voters will very likely reject that.
Well, they wanted a penny, apparently, is what the Royals wanted up in Clay County, a full penny sales tax. And the legislature, the Clay County folks are like, no, we'll give you a half penny if that. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think they're off the table. They won't pony up what the Royals want. So
no, it's a really pricey deal. And I mean, just from a layman, just going back to my basement blogger status is, do does Kansas City need another entertainment district? I mean, the Plaza's not doing so great. P&L loses millions every year. Even out north is like, oh no, move it out north. I mean, their entertainment district out there is not doing so great. So the entertainment district idea, selling that to voters without, and that was the meeting today. A lot of activists are really apt to sell this thing on the basis of the community benefit agreement, which is really the only way that you're going to sell it.
Yeah. All right. Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City. We got a couple minutes here. Zero fare. Kansas City's been doing this for 4 years now. No fare on the buses. That was driven in large part by, I believe, having zero fare on the streetcar, which was just a vanity project. But they had to make it zero fare. If not, nobody would ride that thing. But it looked bad when you got, wealthier people riding a streetcar for free while working class to poor folks pay for a bus. But it looks like this is going to be a big battle here this year when it comes to removing zero fare, because the KCATA wants to bring back some kind of, system to pay for buses. But Mayor Lucas is like, no, it's got to be free.
A literal battle, because the strongest talking point that the ATA has is just watch some of those this week. Watch some of those fights at the bus stop of people who are just using the buses as mobile homeless shelters, which that's not what they're intended to be. Another issue I know progressives. I mean, some people call me progressive. I'm not, but some people use that slur effectively against me. So the progressive argument just doesn't make sense. You have bus drivers telling you, like, hey, we don't feel safe. Environmentalists, like, yeah, mobile homeless shelters are the worst kind of homeless shelters to have. I think they came up with the term. It's always good when you name the puppy. They're called loop riders. And during the summer, I don't blame them. That 2 weeks, this will brighten your winter with snow coming up. So when it's 110 degrees in July, I don't blame them. I will help them aboard because it gets oppressively hot.
Yeah.
And if you want to ride the bus around from the airport, in a loop, fine.
Yeah.
Like whatever you have to do so you don't pass out on the street. But yeah, the loop riders are a problem, and it's degraded. There's no question it's degraded the whole service.
Tony, it is great to have you here, brother. Thank you for coming into the studio.
Thank you, Pete. Happy New Year. Hope it's a good one.
Yeah, man. We'll do this again soon. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City. You get the best news in town at Tony'sKansasCity.com. Be sure to go check it out.